Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on Monday at 11:32 a.m., January 11th. Just to note, I got some interesting bandwidth this morning, so it can be posted. The video might be a little crappy, but hopefully the audio is consistent and clear. Good morning, everyone. One heck of a weekend, Sunday night, Monday morning. And that's what we're going to talk about, the crypto value rotation and holder transfer, because that is overwhelming what occurs when you see this type of price action. There's a massive amount of assets changing from one hand to another. And what is the story and why are they doing that? We know how they're doing that. They're buying and selling. But does the story change? Is the story changing? And that is, as I say, the trend continues until it stops and reverses. Now, what's most pertinent is the macro story. We could have short-term stories and a macro story, and this is where like Plan B comes in and other large observations that we made on this stream. But the short-term story could overwhelmingly be bearish, and the macro story can still remain bullish. And that's the whole point. The whole point is to try and understand how the short-term story fits into the macro story perspective. Today's episode, along with all episodes, sponsored by Change Angel, the non-custodial swap exchange for social goods. Stop depositing on exchanges, not your keys, not your crypto, non-custodial, DeFi, or nothing at all. Bang! Let's pop it over screen and see what's going on. Well, clearly, here's one of the biggest things that we could talk about. Gas prices have exploded to levels that are unimaginable. Barely, it's only whales operating on DeFi at the moment. We're talking about $200 transactions on 1 inch. Uniswap is probably like $7,500 transaction fees. You know, if you're throwing around $100,000 transactions, the transaction fees are still relatively small. So it's overwhelmingly priced out the retail participators and the small scale speculators. But the big boys throwing around the big money are still, full steam ahead. So what they're doing at this moment is likely positioning themselves and trying to get a sense of the market. They're probably positioning defensively, probably taking risk off significantly and applying to yield-bearing assets in an unleveraged type of way, recurring revenue streams, and protecting as much of their principal as possible. A couple of obvious things we could say is that we're still in relatively, let's see if I can got to go, let's go out. So short term, it's bearish. What I see most notably is on the 4 hour. We broke it through trend support to the downside. We broke it through 100 SMA to the downside, but 200 EMA on the 4 hour is still in play. And it's clearly in a significant uptrend. With the oscillators completely bottom, Stochastic is completely on zero. The MFI is below, is in oversold territory, and RSI is just completely bottomed out. Now, the interesting thing that is on my mind, based on these oscillators, it doesn't look like we're really going to get to the 200 EMA on the 4 hour. So that's at about 28,779. And if that bounces anytime here, let's go to the 1 hour and see where the 200 EMA is. That's way above trend formation, so we're clearly not even anywhere near that. So we're really looking at the 4 hour chart. In my opinion, all eyes on the 4 hour chart. I don't know if we get to the 200 EMA on the 4 hour, which is interesting. Because it's still upward sloping in many regards. Maybe it leveled off to some degree, but this is a heck of an inclined slope, and that's where the eye is. There's not much more downside price action that it could occur with oscillators bottomed like this. This is where algos kick in. This is where human psychology kick in and say, oh, they are selling, but how much more can they sell? You can only sell so much, and the macro narrative is still in play. Everything that Raul talks about and Plan B talks about, that is completely unchanged. Nothing has changed. There's one thing that has obviously changed. Dollar wrecking ball. Massive bounce off trend support on this falling wedge. Falling wedge is generally a bullish trend formation. So clearly there's a bit of break to the upside of 200 EMA in the 30-minute. Let's pull out to the 4 hour. My bet is this is some, yeah, look at that. Oh, that's interesting. How do you like that? a lot of folks on the stream might see what I'm saying. That if you are completely overbought on Stoke, RSI looks to be topping, didn't get above 70, and it's showing resistance at the 200 EMA. This is a confluence suggesting, especially considering the oscillators of the 4 hour on macro crypto asset Bitcoin. Yeah, this is more likely than less likely around bottom around 30K. This is actually really interesting right here. I have to tweet about that bad boy. Let me check out who's in the stream. I just say what's up. Igor's in the house. Dumpy Monday. This is a spectacular Monday, and really, it's a dollar wrecking ball. Equities are getting hammered. Gold miners, silver miners. Let's take a look at precious metals. Gold is still on trend. All said and done, gold is still on trend. You got a higher low. Haven't printed a higher high, but you still have a symmetrical triangle trend formation. Gold seems like, what's going on? Gold's sleeping right now. Is like, did I hear something outside? Captain Weber's in the house. Always a pleasure. Almost took it out last night, but held. Oh well. Yeah, there's people that could capitalize on selling high and buying low. Um, Bear in mind this is going to have a taxable event because unless you're in DeFi and there's a bit of obscurity to transactions, you're going to be on a centralized exchange, and those are yeah, that's definitely a taxable event. So buying high, selling low is not necessarily what you want to do from a tax obligation perspective. Something to consider. Heirloom, what's up, my man? Always a pleasure. Wild Toad ride last night. I was another 3 hour REM cycle. That's right. Yeah, I barely slept last night. That shit was crazy. Um, well, here I got Ren up actually. So Ren is completely unfazed. It's sitting below the 100 SMA on the 4 hour. Ethereum obviously got beat up with the other macro asset Bitcoin, but Ethereum still looks to be above this trend formation, trend line, and that's a clear trend line, obviously. So we'll see what happens. Probably this is probably a bottom consistent with the DXY smacking into the 200 EMA and the 4 hour as resistance. I expect equities to reinflate along with the crypto space. Both take a look at what equities are doing at the moment. I bet you they're also starting to inch their way up. Oh, look at these equities. This is what a crazy, horrible thing. Equity. Look at this. Look at this. This thing was down, and now it's minus 64. And this is this is where Sven and Rudy Havenstein started talking like, yeah, this annoys the crap out of them when they see this, and it is quite annoying that you find crypto space moving lockstep with equities inverse dollar, and then you find the correlation to be inverse, but now it's obviously proportional, so it's quite annoying. It's not it's minus 64. The horrible thing, or whatever, however you want to define it, with the 200 EMA, if this holds as resistance, these equities are going to turn green, and it's going to piss off the bears and the folks that are looking forward to rationality reemerging in the space. Lewis says, I noticed that the sell-off is on light volume. Do you have an observation, Noah? I'm talking every coin I own. For thoughts? Yeah, well, let's take a look at Bitcoin. It's pretty heavy volume, relatively speaking. We haven't had a volume spike like this going back to December. You could push it back. I mean, this is the largest sell-off volume that we've had probably since November-ish. Meaningful sell-off volume. But the thing is, when you have sell-off volume like this, that's probably equivalent, comparable to past experience, but you have such an inflated price, this is why you have the downside price action that is exacerbated to such a degree. 30,700. Basically, eyes are on the DXY at this point. If this thing starts to bounce down and doesn't push above the 200 EMA in the 4 hour, and the oscillators totally indicate that that's likely the case. Let's throw up the MFI. Volume, consider it RSI. Why no drawing? I don't know. All right, that's besides the point. Comparable to RSI in many regards, but we're in way overbought territory for the dollar, and this, in all likelihood, the the data suggests that there's likely to be downside price action for the dollar verse, and that would correlate to inverse price action for equities in the crypto space, which would be bottom here, and obviously moving back up in Nasdaq and the Dow. Um, Pellets buy day, who's buying and selling? I sure as hell know that my portfolio is spot on. I think I tweeted that yesterday, that I have nothing that I want to adjust or I need to adjust. I have the appropriate allocations. I am mostly risk off, and I have my speculative bets. I've experienced significant depreciation, but it's not a massive hit to the portfolio considering the gains that have been accrued over the pretty much 2020. I'm well above my psychological price gain amount. That keeps the wife and myself overwhelmingly content. And the indicators are suggesting this has been a massive value transfer from weak hands to strong hands. People trying to liquidate because they think there's downside price action. A lot of them not lucky enough to get back in. And that's the problem. You end up selling now, and then you see 20% to the upside, and that's going to be quite frustrating. So not easy to play this type of volatility. But what you have to remind yourself of is the macro story. And the macro story is different for everyone. You have to define your own story. And that's what I try and suggest to everyone. Tell the story. What is the story that you understand? What is the story that you believe? And then you got the story that you hope to be. And that's the altcoins. That's where you apply, speculative thought processes, and you take your gambles and you take your bets with 1% of your portfolio, a little bit of your portfolio, and that's where you make your asymmetric returns, which then you funnel profits back into your sound money, risk-off asset, Bitcoin. Um, yeah, well, everything's on sale. I mean, I guess, I'm not really a buy the dip kind of guy, but this is, in many regards, a buy the dip moment. So what you want to keep an eye on really is the DXY. If this thing breaches the 200 EMA to the upside and we see a bounce in the Stoke back up to 100, that's going to be scary. Like if this prints a resistance flip support, then pretty much the equities markets and the crypto space are in trouble. Macro, the 10-year, 1.132. That's clearly significantly up since August, at less than 0.5. And this is where Stephen Van Meter's analysis will come in handy, and he has a much better understanding than I could ever have of the bond market, who's buying, primary dealers, the Fed, and buy pressure, sell pressure, so on and so forth. Anyway, Heirloom, feeling good with your story. That's what matters. You gotta tell a story, and you have to bear in mind if the story changes. That's when you take action. If the story hasn't changed, there's no action to take. And for me and my portfolio, the structure of my portfolio, the story hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. What we've had is a capitulation event where we were in an area of price action where there was extreme profit to be taken. And there's still a large portion of the space that's the way they operate: buy low, sell high. And a lot of people are not like that. And that phenomena where the shift moves from people speculating on buy low, sell high to just value preservation. As the shift moves toward value preservation, value storage, sound money, that's how we find these higher lows and higher lows and higher highs from the macro perspective. And that's when you zoom out to the weekly and you're like, yeah, I know it's a big dip, but come on, what an incredible chart, guys. I mean, because we can see some serious downside price action, but there's obviously a trend line, and this is very, very meaningful trends. You want to push it up, get some bottoms. I mean, it's higher lows overwhelmingly. So, you can still see dips down to like 14, 15,000. And this is still an incredibly bullish chart. Look, cup and handle, anyone? Cup of Joe in the morning? A cuppa? You know what I'm saying? British folks. The graph interviewed on Real Vision. Good, interesting. I got to hit the Real Vision. when I have time. Incredible content, incredible content. J-Dog, go Digibyte. Love my Digibyte. Jared hit a shout out to everyone yesterday. It was Digibyte's birthday. From wonderful asset in all regards. From a technical aspect, it's getting absolutely crushed and obliterated. This is not the asset to hold if you want to preserve value. You could clearly have a speculative position in the asset, but it is absolutely getting obliterated. 70% more. From its recent high, it's down 80%. Yeah, this is not an asset that you have the vast majority of your portfolio allocated to. It's a speculative asset that is not a macro player. It doesn't fit into the global macro financial system. The speculative bet is that it becomes a systemic component, a public utility, as I often tout. But this is highly volatile, and this is if you have a vast majority of your portfolio allocated to an asset like this, you're going to destroy your portfolio and lose your money. So this is where position sizing, risk assessment, risk analysis comes into the picture. Don't go all in, don't spread too thin, but it's a nice speculative bet. The upside potential is massive. Look at these rips to the upside on the weekly. 2017 price action, insanity. And with Bitcoin and Ethereum pushing all-time highs and eventually going up, up, and up, we could speculate that this price action could actually be exacerbated. But as of right now, I don't have any recommendations for buy and sell. All I can ever tell everyone and anyone is if you applied excessive value towards an asset such as this, of which the entire altcoin space is filled with them, you're experiencing massive rips to the downside and you're going to lose your money. So Bitcoin is the risk off of the crypto space. Bitcoin is not risk off relative to gold and silver, and equities are getting hammered as well. And this is where you could watch Stephen Van Meter for the bond trade. Bonds going up in value, yields getting collapsed, but obviously yields are on the rise. So it's just a hot mess out there. That's probably the best way to say it, boys and girls. It is a hot mess out there. What else am I missing? NBA in the house. Lewis, always a pleasure. Digilight, the market is puking from many assets perspective, but we still got some large scale macro trends in play as I pointed out. The DXY looks to have topped, hitting resistance on the 200 EMA. So bear in mind, this is this is meaningful. Look, a resistance hit on the 200 EMA with the 200 EMA going down like this. This is very bearish. Even though you're in a falling wedge, this is bearish. Look at the slope on the 200 EMA on a relatively long-term time frame. There we go to the daily. I mean, look at the slope on that 200 EMA. You could have a break to the upside, which is a bullish breakout, and then you find resistance on the 200 EMA, and you have further downside action. So as much as price appreciation of the DXY is destructive to the rest of the equities, the crypto space, so on and so forth, there's tops and there's resistance, and then you have the story, the macro story of the dollar and the digital yuan and the ECB and the euro. It's very complicated. So all we get with this data is glimpses that indicate potential confluence, suggesting a story, and that's why every story that everyone tells themselves is unique. Have to try and tell yourself a story. Digilight, buy. Well, if you have free capital, yeah. But if you try to preserve capital, I don't think. I still think the macro narrative is there that why are you going to store value in dollars over time, over long enough time horizons? Dollar depreciates 100% guaranteed. Bitcoin, based on the chart, it appreciates over time significantly. Simple as that, from the big picture, top down. I was hoping to see you yesterday at the Digibyte birthday party. Sorry, man. I know it's hard for me to keep up with everything that's going on. On the weekends, I'm not really allowed to touch the computer. Wife kind of hits my hand with a ruler, but I try my best. You know, good people, wonderful crew. The Digibyte is a genuine and honorable movement and platform, and it can have a significant impact on on technology and the utility it provides, and because of its decentralized nature and has critical mass decentralization, it could really be a public utility. Has great potential. But as I would like to remind everyone, if you over apply excess portfolio balance toward it, you're going to destroy your portfolio. So speculative play, if this thing goes up 1,000%, you turn 1% into 10%, and you're going to change your portfolio to the upside. So, never go in, never spread too thin. Thoughts on DPI? It's a nice index. That's cool. Nice mention. So, yeah, index funds are designed to minimize upside and minimize downside. Designed to decrease volatility. And there's no reason you can't apply some value to it. That's a great thought. Good mention. Lido is going to put big incentives on Curve Pool. That's right. Curve is on fire. Man, so that's why we've talked about it for pretty much all of 2019. With oh my God, gas prices at 6.98. Oh my God. So you know what it is? The gas prices are that high because people are being forced to unwind leverage positions that are at risk of liquidation. So this is going to rip daily volume on Curve to the upside. And that means I'm getting transaction fees. Next week is probably going to be a $600 to $800 week. Incredible. And I have some in the ape tax. I mean, 1inch is also cranking out returns. I mean, 1inch is pretty much cranking out 100% APY. Obviously, that's spot and it fluctuates, but it's pretty much cranking out 100%. I mean, this is about a week, 110, and if it's at $1.10, $400 a month, $500 a month, and then over time, this becomes a systemic component of financial infrastructure. Then it's going to appreciate. If it doubles in price, this is $800 a week for however long I keep it running, which is probably going to be indefinitely, and $800 a week for a year, and all of a sudden you realize if it's running around at 250 next year, time horizon, you just made an extra 40 grand over the course of 2021. And Ren is obviously pulling in some significant gains. I'll show you guys the Darknote page. I mean, this is incredible. 13 the roll. So it was pointed out that this is a good portion rollover, but the fact that you have 13 Bitcoin in fees and rollover, and you had 26 Bitcoin emitted last cycle to Darknode operators, this is an incredible way to start the epoch with 28 days left in the epoch. Just the volume is off the charts. This again is people with using their Bitcoin as equity and collateral to achieve leveraged debt positions as well as lending in the DeFi space. And frankly, this gas price has caught my eye. It's incredible. I mean, that's just people spending an exorbitant amount of money to push their transaction to the front of the line because they probably are at risk of liquidation and other value loss type of configurations they've done to their portfolio. Fran says Darknode revenue is growing. That's incredible. What Darknode revenue is just constantly going up month after month, and the monetary velocity and the incentive existing in the space, I just expect it to keep going up, and that's probably a bearish outlook. Digi long term, yeah, throw a bag. It's nice to have a bag of DigiByte. It has massive potential. How big that bag is depends on your risk appetite. And clearly, if you apply excess value to that position, you lost a fortune in the last couple of weeks. Candid, crypto is dead. We will die poor. It's far from that. The macro narrative is still intact. Global financial system is still what it is. Nothing has changed. Nothing significant has changed whatsoever. All we have is a price action event that's probably due to this complete rip to the upside off of support, hitting resistance on the 200 EMA in the 4-hour, and that's the market. And this is a wrecking ball. And Raul says it very straightforward. Oop, that was oop, not that. Oh, I messed up my chart. Oh, I went to the 4-hour. That's why. It's a wrecking ball. And that's what it does. And that's what it did to equities. Let's take a look at equities real quick. You'll notice the correlation, especially on a day today, because we already see the correlation. But if equities are inching up, if we see this break green, you're going to see Bitcoin bounce. And when you see Bitcoin bounce, you know damn well it's going to be more pronounced in the equities market. Go back to the Bitcoin USD chart before we wind down the stream. I mean, look at this. This is an incredible chart. because this goes back to 2017. Look at this. Wow. And this was obviously March. This was when the pandemic and the lockdown started. So this is an aberration. It's an obvious aberration because you have higher, even in considering it, you have higher lows. That's crazy, a multi-year trend formation like that. And that's so consistent with the cup and handle. Let's zoom into the 1 hour and see what's going on. Broke to the downside, 200 EMA, obviously. Let's increase that. Let's go back to the 4 hour because I like seeing the 200 EMA below. Gives us a sense of the bottom. But look at that. There you go. You got a little Dragonfly Doji trying to print. And we're above the 200 EMA, and oscillators are bottomed, you know? And when this bounces, you're going to see 32,000, 33,000 really quick. What you hope not to see, depending on what the dollar does, is finding resistance on previous support. But I would probably lean optimistically towards punching back into trend formation and just having this trend formation continue. That's really why all eyes are. And look at that. Look at that. Look at that dip. Look at that dip to the downside. And this is the 4 hour. So there's a whole Stoke field to traverse. This is obviously a bullish divergence. Higher lows in the Stoke, higher lows in the RSI. Clearly, resistance held, overbought conditions. You're going to have a trend reversal. It's going to a short-term trend reversal, obviously. Long-term trend reversal is the falling wedge. But short-term is obviously what is moving the markets today. Layer 2 really needed. Yeah, was 612 on the gas? Wow. Wow, wow, wee wah. Yeah, but layer 2 is on the verge. That's why the macro narrative is unchanged. Synthetics with their optimistic roll up is going to be crazy, and Loopring with their ZK roll up and their L2 liquidity pools. Wow, wow. It's just the amount of development and progress in the space is just unending, and it's ferocious. And what's needed is a monetary velocity indicator. Because it's got to be like through the roof and vertical. It's got to be exploding. And what is monetary velocity? And basically, it's a major macro indicator that's used to really assess a good portion of the global financial system. You know, M2. M2 monetary velocity for the US dollar is basically imploded to historically low levels. And that started in September of 2019, and it was only inflamed by the pandemic. It was not started by the pandemic. That started with the repo operations in September 2019. Monetary velocity was collapsing. And what have we seen in 2020 and 2021? I think it's just going to accelerate. Monetary velocity is exploding. So what is monetary velocity and what does it do to psychology? It is intoxicating. It is basically an incentive system that's drawing in participation, providing yield, real yield, 30, 40, 50%. And the yield is real. Obviously, the yield is there's a speculative component to the yield is often denominated in volatile assets that have asymmetrical price appreciation and depreciation. But that's just higher on the risk, the yield curve. That's the whole point. That's what's emerged as a yield curve in the crypto space, where you can have higher risk assets producing larger amounts of yield, 50, 75, 100, 200% yield on some of the liquidity pools that have impermanent loss. But Bancor's throwing around, 50, 40, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 100%, some of them on their impermanent loss protection protocol. So there's going to be incentivized. So it's going to be denominated in BNT. So that I would say that it has less of a risk profile as compared to many other DeFi yield-bearing plays. But then you obviously just got rehypothecation, which is you could provide WBTC, RemBTC in an Aave or compound type of fashion, or Celsius or BlockFi, and you're getting meaningful percentages. And that's obviously towards the less risky end of the yield curve. That's crazy. That's what's emerging. That's what's emerged. It's a yield curve where you can apply increasing risk to get increasing return. Less risk, you're still going to get 100 times more return than you could ever get in a bank account, while still having the asymmetrical upside exposure to Bitcoin and its big picture story of what's playing out. That's the deal, boys and girls. What amount staked using to generate $800 a week on Curve? A lot. Depends very much on the volume of the platform. So if I was $800 a week, you'd probably talking about like speculatively. It depends on volume, daily volume. So at 300 million, I mean, it's a lot. You're probably talking about 50 to $75,000. And then if the volume dips, you're going to make less money. But the whole speculative bet with getting yield from the current platform is if this daily volume is 2 billion or it's $20 billion a day. So if this was $20 billion a day, I'm making $600 a day. So that changes everything. What if it's 200 billion? You know, the global financial system is trading in the trillions of dollars a day. So 200 billion when you're dealing with, $10 trillion a day of global financial system activity, 200 billion is a fraction of a percent. And if this was 200 billion and I'm making $6,000 a day, so, there's a speculative play here. That's the name of the game. What's up, broski? What's up, Script? Always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. My man. Pellets, XDAI, good project. Yes. XDAI is a side chain, lots of activity, probably one of the side chains and L2 type solutions that has the most activity. Yes, indeed. Script says, I had a friend that just got Bitcoin, is super surprised about it, but he doesn't understand all the other cryptos in time. Yeah, so, as I always say, start risk off. And frankly, look, I started speculating back in like 2017, and I've been in crypto since like 2014. But I ended 6 years, 7 years later, I'm mostly risk off. And I have my small speculative positions and my yield generating assets. And that's the way my, my story, my narrative has evolved. And this is the way I've crafted my portfolio, is the way I express my narrative. And that's why I said yesterday, when we had significant price action to the downside, I had nothing to do with my portfolio because nothing has changed with my story. My capacity to express my story is identical today as it was yesterday, and I expect to see a bounce. Keep your eyes on the DXY, guys. I expect further downside price action as we exit overbought territory. Peter, always a pleasure. White Wolf, thoughts on Stellar? No interest. Anna, howdy, Anna. Welcome. I finally got to catch you live. Please enjoy. Stop by anytime. I'm here every day at 11:30. Ask any questions you have on Twitter, anything in the stream. I'm always happy to help. The whole point of the stream is to try and help everyone make better decisions, stay rational. I mean, we just had like a ridiculous 20 something percent correction to the downside. And that could be devastating to a portfolio. But what matters is the story. And did anything really change? And if you sold at 30,000, if you sold at 30,000, and it rips up to 35,000 at the end of the day, what was the point? So you really need to have a keen eye on the technicals. And frankly, I wouldn't if I didn't even think about selling for a second. I slept very comfortably last night, and it wasn't even something that entered my mind. Find your story, ladies and gentlemen, and you have to be able to sleep at night, and that's the most important thing. Anyway, vet. I don't really look at vet, but it's just not something that's of interest to me. It's done some significant price action to the upside of late. Let's drop it out to the daily and see what's going on. I mean, this is an extremely volatile asset, guys. You're talking about it's the same thing that everything. Look, it looks exactly like Digibyte. I mean, you're talking about you've lost significant value. Look, a resistance hit on the 200 EMA on the daily. That is brutal, and that is not a trivial downside price action move. I mean, look at this. You lost 28% of your money. This is why, fine, if you have 100 grand and you put $1,000 into it, cool. If you have 5 grand and you put $100, $200 into it, all right. So you're not going to lose a lot of money when it does a 32% dip to the downside. Position sizing, portfolio balance, risk analysis, never go all in, never spread too thin. I'll end this stream. Stop gambling. You don't need to take risk. You don't need to take excessive risk. If this thing becomes a systemic component of some sort of industrial infrastructure, it's going to go up 1,000 times on its money. If DigiByte becomes the holy grail of record storage and asset management and a true public utility, and corporations decide to contribute to securing the system, and it's going to go 1,000 times on the money. So if you put $1,000 into DigiByte and then it's worth $1 million, you win. So you don't need to apply large portfolio positions to uh, the altcoin assets that have yet to find their big picture. Bitcoin has found its big picture. Now, that's the whole point. It's part of the global macro financial system, not necessarily as a risk off overwhelmingly yet, but that story is still evolving. But that's the whole point. It's part of the big picture. The altcoins are not yet there. Look, oh yeah, Pellets mentioning Rook. Rook, February 1st. I don't even want to talk about price action. I don't want to talk about anything. I wait till February 1st to better understand what's going on. But Rook, one of my most exciting positions. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Monday, 12:07 p.m., January 11th. I'm sure we're going to have an interesting one tomorrow as the short-term story of what's going on evolves. Smack those thumbs up buttons. Tell everyone to subscribe. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.